Welcome all into a WCC quarterfinal edition of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. I'm Zach Farmer. That's Thomas Dunn. And there are 4 teams remaining in this version of the 2026 WCC tournament. We are down to, of course, Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and the 2 that advanced tonight, Santa Clara and Oregon State. Both of them handling their business as they needed to do going into tonight to advance to the semis. And in 2 very different ways, these games were handled. Oregon State having to rally late and early, rally early, rally late, hold on for dear life. And Santa Clara going about it very business-like against a very good Pacific team. And let's start with the Broncos on this one, because this was the nightcap. This was the game that ended just a bit ago, and it's the team that maybe secured their tournament bid, as many people are starting to lean toward because of what we've seen with the bubble, what we have seen with Santa Clara to this point. This was the game they needed to have to get over the hump, to at least say, at the worst now, they'll be sweating on Selection Sunday, but of course they can make their case even better on Monday night.
Yeah, that's true. I was about to say, like, the last thing I feel is security, but you get the win, you get your 25 wins, the first time that's ever happened under Herb Sendek, exactly what Santa Clara needed to do. No flat tires. They didn't make it easy down the stretch. They didn't score in the final 5 minutes till the very end with some very, very inopportune offense. We'll call it that. And Elias Ralph had a great game for Pacific. Jaden Clayton, 9 assists, 1 turnover. I thought he was really solid, especially in the second half once the kind of barrage of 3 stopped. I mean, Santa Clara, I think, was 2 of their last 13 from 3 after at one point being 13 of 24. So that just kind of contextualizes some of the game. But Santa Clara got what they needed. Now they're on to, as you mentioned, they're in a high leverage spot now for their NCAA tournament lives. And the way I look at it is, you beat St. Mary's tomorrow, you're in. That's it. You win, you're in. It's a must compete for sure. They've got a bunch of help over the weekend with the bubble, as we mentioned in the last episode. And so it's great. That's all well and good. So they need to find a way to not lose the rebounding battle by 30 last time, like it happened against the Gales, 51-21. That can't happen. Herb Sendek mentioned it can't happen, but it wasn't just a function of the box outs. He mentioned the rotations were rough, and that St. Mary's really put the pressure. And I look at Mikey Lewis and Josh Dennis, point 1A, 1B, along that front. But Santa Clara, all things considered, did what they had to do. It wasn't pretty at times, very pretty at others, but got win number 25, and now I would argue control their destiny.
I mean, the game against Pacific tonight, Santa Clara felt like it was almost a bit of a comfortable lead in the first half, but Pacific made a run. And I think what was most impressive was the fact that Santa Clara was able to hold them off kind of the entire time. And there was multiple points where Pacific looked like they were going to make a run, that they had a couple of moments where they could maybe swing it in their direction. And then there was that 12-point, 3-point barrage there in the second half that it did feel like it obviously separated them each other because they were tied at that point. Like, it really helped Santa Clara to have that buffer. And it did feel like it deflated Pacific a bit, because once those 3 start just falling in, and it happens as quickly as it did, that was 12 points in a matter of 90 seconds. That's a hard thing to overcome, especially against a team like Santa Clara that has played such good defense in addition to what the offense has been doing all year long. And it wasn't just one guy. Like, we saw it, like Alan Graves was involved in that. Elijah Mahi was involved in that. Sash Gavaluga was involved in that. Like, it was a pretty balanced performance from Santa Clara. And now, of course, like the high point, the high man of the night was Alan Graves with 19 coming off the bench. But it really felt like that this was just a collective effort. And the rest we thought could happen or we might see early on clearly did not show up in this one. Santa Clara's offense was ready to roll. They hit 15 3-pointers in this game, and that's a good sign on night one to be heading into a game against St. Mary's, where at least you know that you're feeling good about how the shots are falling in that building.
Yeah, I thought the process for the most part was good. It was connected. You mentioned Sash Kovalugov. I want to shout him out. I thought he had a really solid game, all things considered. 6 assists, no turnovers. I think that's what stands out the most to me, especially just the way we've mentioned all season how Brett Napper is just he's just dealing with an ailment. It's just going to be that way the rest of the season. So Sash Kovalugov stepping up kind of like he did tonight, I think it was crucial. And he was more of the function of how Santa Clara got the threes. And I say that from the perspective, he was driving to the elbows, drawing that extra defender. And then you mentioned Alan Graves. He was all alone up top at times. So Broncos did a good job of getting the ball, snapping it kind of in rotation, 21 assists on their 27 made baskets, did a rock solid job in that department, all things considered. And as a whole, they should be pleased with their offense aside from the final 5 minutes. Defensively, however, I don't think that was up to par, not up to snuff. Too many times just let Pacific put him in rotation. Elias Ralph, I mean, he was really damn good. No, there's really no bones about it. If there was such a thing as a nice calm 25, that's what he got. Got to his spots, had really nice footwork. I thought him and Jayon Pitt in particular had really good footwork tonight. And I think that's kind of what they got Santa Clara to bite on quite a bit of stuff and kind of put them in a bit of scramble mode. So Pacific, massive credit to them. And I really want to shout out Dave Smart for what he's doing in Stockton. Like, this is a noticeable step up, and it may not even be done yet because they may go like to the NIT, CBI, whatever that may be, kind of like Seattle U. This is a noticeable step in the right direction, and all Pacific fans should be very pleased with the progress that Dave Smart is putting into their program. And now it is a big question: should this be the end of the season? What can you do next? Because you just lost a ton of veterans. So that's going to be. It's good to accept the season for what it is for Pacific, while acknowledging that this could be part of a new standard in Stockton.
Yeah, and obviously, like, there's many ways to especially rebuild quickly in the portal in the NIL era. So this Pacific team could be right back where we are right now, if not even better, a season from now. And the one thing I think during the press conference that I noted was how Dave Smart talked about how this was one of his favorite teams that he got to coach, and he's been coaching a long, long time. And just the personality, the makeup, how connected this team was, really was something that like stood out for him. And the fact that like this has been one of his favorite teams to work with and coach, I think says a lot about where this team already is or where the program already is at this stage. And we're only a year or two into this into the Dave Smart era at Pacific. So I think a lot of like good things can come of that as they move forward. Hopefully it's not the end of the road this season. It could be, but we hope that we hear Pacific's name pop up again in the next couple of weeks and one of these postseason tournaments. Now, all right, one more before we move on.
Now, I was just going to say I co-sign that because you want to find out, especially with this new iteration of the conference, of who are going to be these next players to join St. Mary's and Santa Clara. And with USF tapering off the season, we're going to get into that game real quick after we preview Santa Clara St. Mary's. It's like, okay, Pacific, like can you get yourself into the discussion? I think this was a noticeable step in the right direction in doing so.
So as you kind of started to segue there of what we were going to do, I have to we're switching over because it is St. Mary's and Santa Clara on Monday night in the semis. And this matchup, I mean, these two split the two matchups. Santa Clara, I played really well down at the Levy Center. St. Mary's played really well at UCU Pavilion. And we know from the last matchup what for Santa Clara that needs to be fixed is those defensive rotations, the rebounding, all that needs to be better than it was the last time out. They just got hammered on the glass. And St. Mary's offense really started to click. That was one of their better performances of conference play to that point. And thinking about what St. Mary's is starting to bring, what they are starting to look like. Again, you mentioned Josh Dent and Mikey Lewis. Those two have really been playing well of late. Mikey Lewis obviously is coming off the 31-point performance against Gonzaga a week ago. And it may not necessarily be those guys, but we see it very clearly that those two have turned into the catalysts for the Gales the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and to start with, I'm going to go back to the second game where the Gales and Broncos played and kind of echo what Herb Sendek said, because initially I had the impression of, the centers and forwards are just getting beat by Andrew McKeever and Harry Wessels and Dylan Shaw. But in actuality, it was the function of Josh Dent and Mikey Lewis getting blow by after blow by after blow by, switch after switch after switch. They were so good that it made life so much harder on the Santa Clara centers because they would get pulled out. And then imagine trying to have a 6'4" guy trying to box out Harry Wessels and Andrew McKeever. Not going to go very well. So when I think of the game in Moraga, I mean, Mikey Lewis did as he pleased. I believe it was a career high 7 assists in that one. Yep. Did what he wanted. Josh Dent, not too far off himself. I know wasn't really accustomed to a normal game. Shot the ball well from 3, especially early. So I look at all that. For me, the onus is on the guards because the guards make the centers better. And the better Mikey Lewis can continue to be, the better as consistent as Josh Dent can be, that'll be all the better for St. Mary's. I'd say the one thing I want to look at is how did some of these youngsters look in kind of a tournament neutral setting? I think that's a question that needs to be answered. And it's not even for the sense of just the WCC tournament on its own accord, but I'd say the NCAA tournament. Like, how does Dylan Shaw kind of look under these circumstances? Montes Uzanis, does he have kind of more magic up his sleeve? What does Paulus Morauskas kind of look like? We sometimes have it known at certain points in this season. So those are kind of my focal points. How does the youth movement kind of translate into the Orleans arena, and how do those guards kind of function for St. Mary's? How steady can they be? And in Mikey Lewis's case, how explosive can he be?
Now, obviously, like at least a few of these guys have had some success in that building, youth or not. Mikey Lewis playing in that building a year ago when St. Mary's won the WCC, reached the WCC final like that. Now, the final was an ugly final between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. That the combined 1 for 34 from 3 was not a good look for either one of them. But it is a backcourt that has played in that building before, obviously did have, I mean, the last year experience. I mean, the semifinal game was Pepperdine, like the unexpected Pepperdine wave run that ended up with them facing St. Mary's. So the fact that it was St. Mary's 2 games were Pepperdine and then an ugly affair on both sides against Gonzaga, not necessarily some shooting success, offensive success from this group. So there will be some expectations, or it's probably some self-imposed expectations of what this team could do inside Orleans Arena, because you did mention the youth. And I think that is something that we've seen from time and time again, that St. Mary's, that group has played really well at home, and they have not played nearly as well away from UCU Pavilion. And so, that's night 1 in Vegas is going to be a big test for them. They played decently well when they did have one neutral site event down at the Battle for Atlantis. So we've seen that they got the win against Wichita State down there, the win against Virginia Tech down there. So they do have some success on neutral sites. It's been a while since they've had to be in one of those environments. So what do they look like 4 months later in a brand new environment? But I agree with you. I think it's the kind of the backcourt. It's the key. Dylan Shaw, I think, is always kind of one of those catalyst points as well. And I'm also going to look at Liam Campbell to kind of see what he can do again in those spare minutes, that if Mikey Lewis does struggle a little bit, what can he bring to the table as well? Again, like the St. Mary's guards, I think, are going to be kind of the tipping point one way or the other. We've seen the St. Mary's bigs struggle a bit over the last couple of weeks, but it's been the guards who have kind of picked up the rest of the team.
Yeah, I would definitely co-sign that analysis, obviously, as Mr. Gale himself speaking on his squad. And in this type of setting, I think Dylan Shaw, the thing that stands out for him, and acknowledging that, yes, he was recognized with all freshman team, but I feel like he probably could have slid into honorable mention all WCC based on our predictions, is that he just wears a lot of different hats. Like some days it's shooting, other days it's defense, other days it's rebounding. Some days it's a combination of all 3. And I think I agree that Dylan Shaw is kind of a tipping point factor, because if he does go, say, 1 of 6 from the field, well, what else can he do? Because he's been really great on Elijah Mahi in these matchups, and that allows Paulus Morauskas to kind of roam free and maybe take on Alan Graves. Then what do the centers kind of get to? Maybe they can be kind of more of a roamer in the paint, so to speak. So I think Dylan Shaw is an essential fulcrum to this matchup against Santa Clara, because if he's not into it or he's not in the right place, I think Santa Clara can get some cross matches going, especially when you think of guard to guard, Christian Hammond on his floater, and potentially pulling the centers out for threes.
Yeah, the Santa Clara guards are also going to have to be a big part of this. I mean, Christian Hammond had that 25-point game round one. He only had 11 in round two. Brett Napper was 2 for 7. Elijah Mahi was 2 for 5. Sash Gavaluga was 3 for 9. Not a whole lot of output from the guard spot. Alan Graves still had 20 points in that matchup. He was still doing Alan Graves things in the second matchup in Moraga. So, and with his performance again tonight, the 19 points, I do expect him to continue that strong play against St. Mary's. It's whether or not everyone else comes along for the ride. But the big picture looking at this game this is Santa Clara's opportunity to secure an NCAA tournament bid. Right now, like, we can very much make the case that, yeah, should be safe, probably safe. If they beat St. Mary's, they will be safe on Selection Sunday, and we will be hearing 3 WCC teams be called on CBS Sports.
Yes, we will. I mean, Santa Clara has what they want right in front of them. It's on them to go out and take it. St. Mary's won't make it easy, nor have they in years past. Even thinking back to the USF bid back in 22, they didn't make things easy on the Dons that year, and I expect similar to St. Mary's. They're going to bring their best. Randy Bennett and company are always fully prepared, and I'm really excited to see, because we'll have you in the building for this one. But we're going to get everybody, get the band back together, especially as the Zag fans. I honestly think that a lot of this, not that it matters, but it's just a fun footnote to make. The Zag fans who stick around after the Gonzaga-Oregon State game, they'll probably be rooting for Santa Clara, I would think. Just because of the way the rivalry is with St. Mary's. I could see a little bit of that, and I'd be intrigued to see maybe how that kind of, not dilemma, but more of that observation, how that kind of plays out. If it actually gives a boost to the Broncos, if the youth for the Gales actually succumb to it or whatever. But just a fun footnote.
Yeah, I could probably attest to that when St. Mary's had to play in Spokane in the tournament 2 years ago. That building was very anti-St. Mary's, even though it was not against Gonzaga in the Spokane arena. But we're going to transition to the other quarterfinal game that happened on Saturday or Sunday night, and that was Oregon State and USF. And the Dons had an 11-point lead in this one out the gate. Oregon State didn't score for the first 6 minutes of this game, and Oregon State won.
That they did.
They rallied in the first half, made it a 2-point game. They took a lead. USF came back. It was a tie game with 5 minutes to go, and Oregon State they hit a couple threes. They were able to hold on just enough, because USF was not going to make it easy at the end, also making a furious run to try to tie that game, force overtime. But the Beavs, 4-seeded Beavs, are moving on. Wayne Tinkle, his squad being able to kind of pull through. I mean, we talked about it needed to be a Dez White night. It was a Dez White night on Sunday. Great first half from him. He basically dragged that team back into this game in the first half, and then it was in the second half a lot of Josiah Lake.
Let me cook. All right, let me cook, because I called that Dez White, and he's been dealing with a shoulder problem. Like this was definitely not totally in the cards to a certain extent, and he put on a show. He did great. He was 4 threes in the first half, as you mentioned, kind of rose them from the dead, because Oregon State, to start the game, 0 for 6 with 5 turnovers. Not great, Bob. And the Beavers, just time and time again, it was Dez White. And even Chris Gerlofson at one point in the timeouts was like, are you going to give him more threes? To his own team. And narrator, they gave him more threes to the tune of 6 total for the game. And Dez White, I mean, easily the game ball for Oregon State. And the stats won't necessarily do him justice, but Wayne Tinkle shouted him out post-game. Noah Ammenhauser, because he had lost out of the rotation. And Wayne Tinkle was very matter of fact that it was because of his focus, and he had noticed a different tune once he had gotten those DNP coaches' decisions that, okay, he's now kind of snapping into gear, and then earned those minutes and I believe he was a game high plus 20. I know plus minus is a fickle thing in a 1-game sample size, but I thought he was a really steady presence overall for Oregon State. And you're noticing a team that's playing inspired for their coach. We talk about it as like a cliche when coaches are fired and you're still let to stick around. I mean, they're down 11-0, could easily folded right then and there, but they did not. They're playing for their head coach, Wayne Tinkle, and on the other side for USF, ultimately the last turn and the most disappointing season in the conference relative to expectation. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah, a couple other names that had key moments for Oregon State. Yak Yak coming through with a couple of big buckets. Kazea Akisi coming through with a couple of key drives and buckets. Like it was almost like it was Groundhog's Day on those two drives. It was like watching the replay all over again. Oregon State just got it from a lot of different spots tonight, and they needed every last one of them to pull through in this one. And it does say a lot about what these players think of Wayne Tinkle and how they've been so connected with him. And yes, we can talk about the lack of success, the fact that they really haven't met expectations or whatnot. But you were in the press conference afterwards, and Wayne Tinkle talked a lot about just like what the last week has been like, as far emotionally for the team, for him, for kind of everyone surrounding the situation since the announcement came that he was going to be parting ways with Oregon State. Just kind of talk a little bit about that, because that just kind of like it stood out so much about what the last week has been for all of them.
Yeah, he fully admitted that it was the last 10 days have been a big emotional toll. And even that extended, starting with his team, that in their regular season finale at Santa Clara, they were just emotionally out of gas. And who can blame them? I mean, you received news before the season even is over that things are changing no matter what. And that's a tough pill to swallow, no matter where you are kind of on that totem pole. And I think Oregon State fans, from the response I've seen on social media, kind of empathize with the way this is kind of ending, regardless of the either correct or incorrect conclusion, depending on what side of that equation you fall on. So they have mentioned, the Beavers, that this has been a very loaded time. Wayne Tinkle mentioned he's had guys, including assistant coaches and players, crying in the locker room. Just they know what's happening. They know what's at stake. And he said, okay, look, it's not about me. It's about we. It's about the team. It's about us and what we do. And he said he was concerned about the emotion entering a game against USF. And it kind of bit them to start. But then eventually they kind of dug their feet in, got themselves going, and they just said, look, at least for tonight, we're not going to let our team lose. Obviously, have a tough task tomorrow in facing Gonzaga, but will not be denied effort, especially in that second half when they just continue to make timely three after timely three. They told Yak Yak to start shooting the three when he's open at the top of the key, and he obliged, getting it done. I believe that was his second three made of the season, if my math is correct on the Yak Yak status from beyond the arc. So that's, at least for me, that's kind of how I look at it. A lot of loaded emotion, and rightfully so. Eventually churned out for the better in the Beavers. And look, we'll see how it kind of looks now, because once you get a game under your belt, I think that kind of changes things a little bit, more or less, solely because you get your legs under you. And yes, it's not easy to kind of turn around less than 24 hours later and play, especially against the Zags. But when you realize, okay, it's not the peril of, oh, we lose, we're done. It's all right, we get a chance to play together again, more than anything. So that's kind of how I view the emotional aspect of the Oregon State Beavers.
Yeah, and they will take on the Zags on Monday night in the first game of the semifinal round. And last time out, this was a pretty close matchup in the first half between these two squads. It was a 4-point game in Corvallis before the Zags opened it up in the second period. I mean, this was Graham Ike's, I believe this was a second game back, 35 points, 13 for 18 from the floor. Tyon Grant Foster, he had 15 off the bench. And this wasn't necessarily like a collective good offensive night for the Zags. This was the Graham Ike show. And we know that we've seen when he gets going, he becomes nearly impossible to stop. And so the Zags the Beavs are going to need their front court to be as good as they have been all year long to have a chance to slow him down, because you're not going to stop Graham Ike. You're just going to have to hope that you can make his touches a little bit tougher, even if it's like pushing him a little bit more out to the 3-point line, even though we've seen that he has been very effective from out there over the last month. it feels like that's what you kind of have to do. You have to make some of the others be the guys who beat you, because that is where Gonzaga has struggled. Is everybody else? Who else can kind of come along for the ride? Do you get a good night from Mario St. Superi? Do you get a good night from Tyon Grant Foster? What is going to be the health of Jalen Worley? What are you going to get anything out of Adam Miller? This is Emmanuel Inocente. The offense for everybody surrounding Graham Ike has been the big question over the last few weeks, and it hasn't always been there. Of course, now you look up, and of course the Zags have only lost one game since the Portland game when that was really evident. But you still have to be able to kind of figure it out in settings like this. And again, coming to a neutral site, and yes, it is Spokane South at Orleans Arena, but they need somebody else to kind of come along for the ride and get going in this game. It's not that I think that the Zags are in terrible danger of dropping a game against Oregon State, but you got to get it going at least a little bit, because you're going to need it against either St. Mary's or Santa Clara in the title game.
Yeah, you will. And that was kind of like one of the first games where you saw the effects of things happening with Jalen Worley kind of after the Oregon State games, when you started to see things kind of him get kind of dinged up and such. And foul trouble was part of the story in that game where he only played 16 minutes, but still was relatively effective. That was a good Tyon Grant Foster game. That was kind of like probably the only guy and probably half of Jalen Worley that accompanied Graham Ike along that ride. The exact 50 points in the paint in that matchup. And it's one of those weird things, especially this late in a conference tournament. It's pretty uncommon to have gotten to a semifinal and only played a team once, but that's exactly where we are right now. So it's an interesting dynamic of how Oregon State uses its size to throw it at Ike, because compared to some other teams, they have options. Effectiveness, very questionable, but all things considered, if they push Graham Ike out there, it's a double-edged sword, because he can hit threes now, and you mentioned it, and he can hit step-back threes now. We're seeing it, yes, in the Big 2026, Graham Ike is hitting step-back threes. So I look for that leadership aspect from Graham Ike. What are you going to bring to the table? And I think especially so, it's a fair question to raise about the secondary offense and anybody that comes to the table, because Mario St. Superi, kind of similar to Dylan Shaw for St. Mary's, he's a tipping point type guy. Like when he's good, team's really good and they're on it. Same with Davis Vogel. When Mario's off, it is a slog to try and make sure that they can meet a similar level of effectiveness. So Zags, they'll have the crowd behind them. I think this could be a series of games where I look at Adam Miller, because I think he's a guy who can, when he can get hot and just spring kind of a run, kind of like you mentioned with the Santa Clara and their team threes in the second half against Pacific, that's the guy who I key in on and saying, all right, he's gonna be the guy that forces that timeout from an opposing coach.
Last time out, Gonzaga had only 2 turnovers in that matchup against Oregon State. So ball control, of course, the other thing in that one. They did not beat themselves, because looked at Oregon State's shooting numbers. It wasn't terrible. Just there wasn't enough opportunities, and the Zags just beat them up inside on the glass. So this is going to be probably the key to the game one more time between these two. Only the second time that the Beavs and Zags will have played each other this season. And it is the right to go to the WCC championship game. And so we will see what happens on Monday night between these two. It could be Wayne Tinkle's last game. It could be Mark Few's last game in the WCC. Like, there are many lasts that actually come with these two opponents who are going to be both going to the Pac-12 next year. So while it will be the last time the WCC opponents see them, these two will get to know each other very well over the next X number of years over in the Pac-12.
Yep, that'll be a fun one. And the last bit of news I have is I sit here at 11:50 p.m. inside the Orleans Arena. Don't say I don't ever do anything for you guys. Zach Farmer on site tomorrow. All right, we will have live coverage from both of us here at the Orleans Arena with special guests in tow over the course of these last couple days at the WCC Tournament. So it's a blast, Zach. We're ready to have you here.
I am going to be waking up in about 5 hours to head to the airport. So it's going to be the quick turnaround for me, but I will be in Vegas. It's going to be a long day, but it's going to be a fun day at the Orleans Arena, as it always is. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are listening to the podcast. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC pod. That's Thomas. I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody. And we'll be both live in Las Vegas tomorrow night.